We're live at the National Waterfront Museum in Swansea for the second in our series Ask the Leader, ahead of the Welsh Assembly election on May the 5th. Our audience is a mix of undecided voters and party supporters. Join us on social media, the hashtag Wales2016. So let's welcome the leader of UKIP in Wales, Nathan Gill. And our first question this evening comes from James Maiden. James.
Did political correctness kill the early debates on immigration?
Yeah, I pretty much think it did. Throughout my political career, which has only been 11 years, it seems that wherever I go, people feel that they're able to shout words of racist and fascist and things like that at me, despite the fact that our immigration policy is actually the fairest immigration policy of all the political parties. Because if you look at the way that the EU is, the EU basically says, if you are from the EU, you can come into Britain, but we will discriminate against people from India, from Africa, from all other nations. And what we say, very simply, we want an Australian points-based system that it's meritocracy. If you have the skills that we need, you are more than welcome to come here, regardless of where you come from. We don't care about your colour, about your ethnicity, about what religion you have. If you have the skills that we need, you're welcome to come here. And that basically is our policy.
Are there too many immigrants in Wales?
I think if you look at the LDPs, the local development plans, all over Wales, where we're having foisted upon us this mass house building schemes which are turning villages like Sully in the Vale of Glamorgan into completely unrecognisable areas, I would say that unfortunately it's been too fast and too much, of course.
Too many immigrants in Wales.
Listen, 630,000 people came into Britain last year. That is a city the size of Cardiff and Swansea and a little bit more. Well, all of those people, most of them are adults, need cars, houses, jobs.
Let's look at the figures. 6% of the population of Wales was born outside the UK. Is that fair? Is that too many?
If you are unable to get a house, if you're unable to get a job, then I think you would say yes, absolutely.
The gentleman in the middle there.
Why, thank you, Nathan. Let me just quickly ask, is UKIP a racist party, to put it bluntly, really?
Well, thank you for asking that. Of course we're not. I mean, if you look at the dictionary term for racist, it's where you believe that your race is superior to another race. We don't believe that in the slightest. I've been all over the world. I've been to Africa, I've been to the Americas, I've been around Europe and China. I don't believe that we have more of a say and more of an ability over any other nation. In fact, whenever I go to other places in the world, I'm amazed at how much we can learn from them. That's not racism, is it? That's the acknowledgement that we're part of a larger world, but the reality is, just to say that we want to protect our borders, that's not racist. It's not.
Let's take a few points. This gentleman here, and then the gentleman in the back. This gentleman here first, please.
Diolch. I was under the impression that these programmes are being held in advance of the Welsh Assembly elections. This topic, along with other topics held last night, such as disability benefits and electricity prices, bear no relevance upon the National Assembly. They're outside its legislative competence. The BBC has an informative role to play. It can do better than
Okay, we are looking at all issues, and we are looking at immigration as a key plank of the UKIP policy.
Let me answer that, though, because
these are the questions that have come in.
On Monday there was an opinion poll that went out, and in one of the questions that was asked to people about the Welsh Assembly elections was, what are your priorities for the Welsh Assembly elections? Number one, the NHS. Number two, immigration. Even though it's not devolved.
Stick to the question.
I agree it's not devolved, but it's a concern of the people.
Let's stick to the question, and the gentleman in the back.
I struggle to reconcile with the UKIP narrative saying you're not anti-immigrants, when actually the narrative is saying the immigrants coming to steal our jobs, the immigrants coming to take our benefits. I mean, so how do you reconcile that? Because you're already making them an enemy.
No, of course we're not. What we're saying is, quite simply, if you have the skills that we need, you are more than welcome regardless of where you're from. We're not anti-immigration. My wife's an immigrant. I am not anti-immigration. Believe you me.
Let's go back to the questioner first of all. Do you feel that political correctness has stifled this debate?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I'm 27 now, and I've noticed since the early 2000s, either the right or left have been trying to control one side of the debate. So when someone, so when you get parties like UKIP who do come to the forefront and say, actually, we need to look at it in another way, they then start, throwing out terms like racist, you're bigoted. I mean, as far as I'm aware of, the UKIP MEP Stephen Wolfe, whose grandfather's an African American, he's been called an Uncle Tom, a fake black, a coconut, an Oreo. I myself, when I had UKIP posters in my window during the 2014 European elections, I had racist scrolled across my front door.
Let's get back to the immigration policy. Flesh out this point system. Because you used to run care homes, didn't you? And you've talked about employing Eastern European people from the Philippines. Would they be allowed into Wales, for example, under your point system?
Well, all you have to do is you need to demonstrate as an employer that you need somebody with a certain skill, and that through advertising and trying to get people locally to work in that job, you are unable to. And that's what I was able to demonstrate to the Home Office, and that's why I was able to employ people from the Philippines.
Okay. A gentleman in the back.
First of all, I think it's incredibly impressive you take a question that isn't about the EU and turn it into the EU within 5 seconds. But more importantly, I can't understand if you're saying that you only have problems with EU migrants when they take English jobs, so you're particularly looking at low-skilled workers, while your care home company, as you talked earlier, actually employed around a few dozen of Polish and EU migrants that were only just above minimum wage and were living in bunk houses which they paid rent of £50 a week. Do you think that's fair that the company you ran took jobs off English people? Or
I would suggest that you don't believe everything you read in the newspapers and on the internet. My company actually only employed 3 foreigners who were brought in on work permits and were from the Philippines. So the rest of it is all made up. And they were employed on the exact same wage as all of the indigenous staff.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on then to question 2, which comes from Patricia Sanderson. Patricia.
I'm a retired teacher, and I know it's a myth that selection produces the best results for all pupils. Will you explain to us why you want to bring back grammar schools?
Okay, well, I'm a father of 5 children, and I understand completely that we're all different. That my children develop quickly, and some of them are a little bit slower. They all have different desires. And what we've seen is, over the last 30 years, social mobility in this country has gone backwards. It hasn't continued or improved, it's actually going backwards. And we believe strongly that those students, those young people who have strong vocational desires and abilities should be nurtured with that. And we would like to introduce a partnership with universities to give those people, those children with those desires, the abilities to do that without it making it seem that they're second class somehow because they're more vocational than academic. And those children who are more academic can sit exams, I suppose kind of like the old 11 plus, only the difference is what we suggest is that some people develop academically later in life. So we wouldn't just have an 11 plus. We would allow throughout the last years of secondary school them to continue to decide whether they wanted to go from vocational to more academic studies. Look,
okay, let's take it.
One size does not fit all.
Okay.
It doesn't in anything in life.
Thank you very much. Just a point from the gentleman there.
After Wales' education was ranked the worst in the UK following the 2013 PISA tests, what will UKIP do to improve the quality of secondary education provided in Wales?
Thank you, that's brilliant. I mean, obviously, what we're saying is one of our flagship things is to bring back grammar schools, to hone in the skills of people and to promote them and push them and to have the kind of ethos where people want to go into, whether it's vocational or educational, and there's not people looking down on them, making them think that if you don't go to university, somehow you're a failure. Because that's not true. I never went to university, and I'm sure a lot of people here in the room here didn't go to university. It makes no difference. We want to see things like more investment in the STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, mathematics and medicine. And we would actually want to make those STEM subjects free for people to study here in Wales, and we'll be able to fund that by stop giving free grants to people who go and study in England, but we'll actually give them a loan instead.
Right, let's go back to the question on grammar schools.
Yeah. I mean, I use the word myth advisedly. I don't know of anybody other than populist political parties trying to find policies and right-wing think tanks trying to promote an agenda who believe anything that you've just said. For example, social mobility does not depend entirely. Nothing in relation to social mobility can be pushed back and blamed on comprehensive education.
No, but
really
absolutely,
is vitally important
education
that
is
people
vital
understand that.
throughout our entire lives, and we should be a nation that pushes and encourages education throughout our entire lives.
Social mobility has a lot more to do with the inequality in our society at the moment.
But I think you'll find that if you have a grammar school education, you have a lot better chance of getting up that ladder.
Okay, the lady in pink in the back.
Yes. Nathan, currently English children have more spent per head on them in education. Will UKIP try to narrow that gap? Because obviously there isn't a level playing field and we have to compete with everybody. They have more spent per head, so they are at a distinct advantage compared to our Welsh children.
Absolutely, and isn't it bizarre that we have a Welsh government with a huge budget and they decided that it doesn't matter the fact that the last figures we've got is 2012, that the English students were getting £604 per head more than our students here in Wales. And one of the things that has been...
Let's just nail it then on
So
the budget.
you would
ring-fence
absolutely
education,
seek for
increase?
a parity, and we would increase it.
You would increase.
Yes.
Health. Would you ring-fence health spending?
Yes, there's certain aspects within health spending, like for instance,
Okay.
with mental illness, we absolutely want to increase that and then ring fence it, because that is a huge issue here.
So
not
you'd
just in Wales,
spend
but in
more.
Britain.
You'd spend more on education. You'd spend more on health.
Yes.
You'd have to cut somewhere. Where would you cut?
Well, okay, one of the areas that we're going to cut is £78 million currently ring fenced for climate change projects. To me, that just seems absolutely bizarre that we would be trying to stop.
Right,
You know,
okay, well, on that point.
King Canute
Okay.
trying to stop the climate from changing, when in fact that
Okay.
£78 million would be better
Right
off
on
spent
cue.
on our NHS and our
Right on cue.
education.
Let's take question 3 from Debbie McCloy. Debbie.
Hi, I'd like to know, what are you doing to help protect our environment and society from the effects of climate change and progress to a green and sustainable way of living?
Very timely. Wonderful, thank you. Well, look, ultimately I
Do you
am
believe
not...
in climate change?
I'm not an expert, as I'm sure you will all nod and agree.
Just on that, sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah,
do you believe in climate change?
The climate's been changing from day one. It's always changing. Look at the mini ice ages. Look at all of the different... You know, in my own lifetime, I've seen huge changes in
Is
the
it
climate.
man-made? Do we have a role in it at all?
I would be very, very sceptical that man could change the climate. And I think that all we're doing is a bunch of... Literally a bunch of people, King Canutes, thinking that we can stop the tide. To waste the most expensive piece of legislation in British history wasn't the First World War, the Second World War, it was Ed Miliband's Climate Change Act, which has basically pushed senior citizens, widows, into fuel poverty.
So we do nothing about climate change?
No.
No, nothing. We do nothing on climate change.
I personally not.
Right. Okay, you've divided the audience. Some agree with you, some don't. Let's hear from the gentleman there in the front there. Yes.
So
On
you
climate
disagree
change.
with scientists who are trained in universities, you know, that actually know things about all of this? You disagree with science as a fundamental thing?
I'll just give you the quote on that. The UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report found that scientists are 95% certain that humans are the dominant cause of global warming since the 1950s.
95% of which scientists? 95% of the scientists who are paid by the UN to do this research, and how many of them are scientists actually on climate? Not many of them. Do your own research. Don't take my word for it, which I know none of you will, and I hope you don't. But we've got computers for a reason. We've got the internet. Do your own research and find out for yourselves. You know, we've got brains for a reason. Use them.
Great. The gentleman here.
I'd just like to say that I've heard UKIP politicians say some crazy things in my life, and this is by far the craziest.
Let's hear from somebody.
I kind of take that as a compliment, but there we are.
Good on you. But I was going to say, the philosopher Nietzsche made the point that we should all come to our own conclusions, because you say you don't believe scientists, or that's crazy. Well, you don't believe preachers? These people have agendas too. Come to your own decisions. Don't be sheep and follow the crowd.
Exactly.
It's entirely right in what he said.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, and just because I've come to my own conclusions, you know, doesn't mean that you have to then call me a denier and all of these different bizarre terminologies that get thrown around.
Let's take a question from the front here.
Yeah, there have been numerous studies by academic facilities across the globe. There have been documentaries, it's taught in our schools, I learned this in comprehensive school, to stand there and deny climate change is real and it is destroying our world is not just irresponsible, it is ignorant and false.
Yes, but hold on, at what point did I say that there was no climate change? I never said that. I just said that as far as I'm concerned, it isn't man-made. And all of the things that we are doing to try and stop climate change right now in Britain, in 1 week, the rest of the world is negated. So it's a waste of our resources and money, and places like Port Talbot are in sheer trouble right now because of the Climate Change Act and the huge amount of money that Ed Miliband and Labour stuck on the cost of fuel, meaning that Port Talbot has to pay 50% more for its electricity than France. Does France believe in climate change? Absolutely, but why are they charging less for their electricity than we are here in Wales? It's ridiculous.
Let's take this point here, and then this lady here. Yes, you first, please.
It's pure ignorance to deny that we are responsible for climate change.
No.
Okay, and another comment here, please. This lady here.
The environmental factors make on the human body. What makes you think it's not doing that to climate and to the environment at large?
There are huge cycles within climate, huge cycles, and weather isn't climate, and who knows what kind of a cycle we're in. And let's face it, you know, in the medieval times when they had the mini ice age, they probably thought that they were somehow creating it by burning dung or something.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next question, which tonight comes from Stephen Havard. Stephen.
Do you agree that the M4 Relief Road is even more vital now, as the materials used to build it could bring much needed work to the steel industry in Wales?
Yeah, absolutely. But the problem we've got there is, under EU procurement law, it is absolutely illegal for the Welsh Government to say, let's use Welsh steel in the production and the manufacturing of that relief road. It has to go out to tender, and it has to go to the cheapest source possible. And that is the law. So if we're expecting the Welsh Government to break the law, which quite frankly, if I was the First Minister, I would break the EU law and I would say, yes, everything that we do here in Wales must be built with Welsh steel. But I don't agree with the black route, by the way. £1 billion, that's an entire year's capital budget spent on one route. I agree with the blue route.
Okay, just to explain, that is the £1 billion, the expensive project, a whole new motorway. You favour the blue route, is that right?
That's correct.
The cheaper version?
The cheaper version.
What would be your budget for that?
Well, the cheaper version is £400 million.
And you
so we would save £600 million, which we can use on other capital projects, like the A55 in the north, which absolutely gets forgotten about. It was built on the cheap. It doesn't even have a hard shoulder. The A470, which I drive up many a time, and I realise there's a lot of infrastructure that needs fixing. It's easier, is it not, to go into England and come down the motorway to get back into the south than it is to go through Wales. That's a disgrace for a nation.
Let's just look at the steel element of this and the troubles in Port Talbot. Would you encourage, if you were in power in the Welsh Government, more investment, part nationalisation? Would you take over the plan? What would be your plan alongside the UK Government?
Okay, well, no, I don't believe in nationalisation, because why should we bail out one of the biggest companies in the world, Tata, with taxpayers' money, when, quite frankly, one of the problems that we have with the steel industry are not going to go away?
So you'd leave it to the market?
Well, what I would do is, if I was the First Minister, I would immediately reduce the business rates to zero, which our First Minister, and you can ask him later on, cannot do, because of, again, EU law, state aid.
But let's look at the powers you would have as First Minister, Nathan Gill, and would you intervene in any way other than business rates? Would you give a handout at all?
With what money can the Welsh Government actually intervene in this? This is a problem that's been caused by 3 separate governments, and 4 if you include China.
Right.
We have a major problem with Chinese steel being dumped on us, and yesterday I noticed that Andrew R.T. Davis said, oh, we don't want to put tariffs because that will cause a trade war. Wake up, we're in a trade war. America, 30% tariffs on Welsh steel. China, 60% tariffs on Welsh steel. And the EU, 9% tariffs on cheap, subsidised Chinese steel.
Being a fourth-generation steelworker myself, I think it's absolutely disgusting how Welsh Labour have not supported us at all and put business rates up and going to bed with the Greens. Basically, how would you reverse that?
Absolutely, I would. I'm telling you now, I would take down the EU flag that's in the Senate that they're flying with pride, and I would say immediately that the only thing that I could do as First Minister is reduce the business rates to zero. That's £10 million, though. That's a lot.
Would you match the 60 million offered by the Welsh Government?
If we could find it. If we could find it. But
would that be one of your cuts?
No. No,
right, so if it was there, it would...
If we were able to find it. And of course, one of the things that we're saying is, you know, we're looking at the finances in the same way that you guys are able to look at the finances of the Welsh Government. We don't have any insider information because we don't have AMs yet. Once we get AMs elected into the Welsh Assembly, we will be able to go in there and actually find out what they're doing with our money, what the waste is, and find ways that we can actually improve and spend that money better.
A few points from the audience, lots of hands up. Yes, this gentleman here.
Nathan, we're not bailing out Tata, they're selling Port Talbot and their other interests. Isn't it in the national interest that the government take a share and that steel is integral to our future industries?
It's absolutely integral, of course it is. I totally agree. I note that last year, our foreign aid budget, we overspent £172 million. That would keep Tata going for 6 months. How is it that our British government is able to find money to overspend 170 million and cannot find a penny
here,
to help Tata?
You've said you wouldn't intervene on principle here, would you? Even if you had the money, you wouldn't...
The question is, what is the point if we cannot affect the cheap Chinese subsidised steel being dumped on us?
What we're trying to get at,
how are we going to compete?
Would you be an interventionist government?
Some of the Chinese then?
You wouldn't intervene?
I personally wouldn't intervene.
Would you want the UK government to intervene on pensions, for example, and take over the liabilities of pensions to attract Liberty Steel?
So why is it that Tata, as I've just said, the wealthiest company just about in the world, is able to offload all of its debts and all of its problems onto us, the taxpayer? They should be made, actually, to pay for the problems that they themselves have allowed to be created as well.
Right, a couple of points here. Yes, in the front.
I find it funny that the government found money to bail out the banks, but when the British Steel bail out, they can't find any money for us.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's a disgrace.
Gentleman in the back.
The banks actually made that money back, so that's a little bit different to the uncompetitive steel industry. The steel industry is uncompetitive, and so they wouldn't be able to bring it back in the same way.
Let's just be perfectly honest. We have to make our steel industry competitive again.
Anyway,
and the only way you're going to do that, I'm afraid, is by getting out of the EU on the 23rd of June so that we can absolutely set our own balance.
Okay, we can't go there. We will have debates on Europe, I'm sure, but now is not the time to debate the referendum. Back to our questioner. Do you feel you've had an answer this evening?
Yeah, I agree with the answer with the M4 Relief Road, but I still think we should do more to help our steel industry, and I don't think Mr. Gill is really...
I know, but how are we going to sell the steel? It's uncompetitive, completely uncompetitive. The Chinese government have subsidised Chinese steel $11 billion in 1 year. They can dump it at us at prices that we cannot compete with. And under EU procurement laws, we are not allowed to say you can only use Welsh steel in Britain. It's a disgrace.
Thank you very much. You've made that point. Thank you. Let's go to question number 5, which comes from Alan Humphreys. Alan.
Have the stars of UKIP been forced on us in Wales through the regional list system?
And Alan, you're getting at 2 former Conservative MPs maybe here?
Yeah, I'd rather perhaps see Welsh politicians, Welsh UKIP members.
You're talking about Mark Reckless and Neil Hamilton?
Yes, I am.
Right.
Okay, well, I mean, ultimately, I am the leader of UKIP in Wales, but I do not have a great deal of power and certainly not with regards to the selection of candidates. The selection of candidates went to a ballot of the membership. The membership selected who they wanted in each region, and then the NEC approved that. I had no say in that whatsoever. Would I have allowed people to come in over our hard-working Welsh membership? Probably not. Probably not, but it wasn't my decision. And the members have given us these candidates, and therefore I backed them.
You'd rather they weren't there then?
No, I'm just saying, would I have, in the first place, chosen that? No, probably not. But the reality is, That's what we've got. That's what the members chose through democracy.
Are they
and so
an asset
therefore
to the
I
party?
back the democracy of it. Sorry?
Are they an asset to the party, would you say?
Well, of course, got years of experience. Mark Reckless was an MP. He did a very brave thing when he came over to UKIP. We all recognise that. He's a very intelligent and clever man. Of course they're an asset.
Right, let's take some audience members. The lady in pink again, thank you.
Yes. With regards to Mark Reckless, I am a UKIP member and I voted for Mark Reckless, and I'm Welsh, and I'm proud I voted for him because I looked at his background, I looked at everything he could give to us, and I'm proud of it. It was a democratic vote, and that's the way it should be.
Let's take some points over this side. Yes, this gentleman here on the end.
Taking into consideration that you're talking, basically stating that it's UKIP policy that the people who have been selected, do you not think that it's actually detrimental to your party when some of your candidates who have been selected have actually stood down in protest?
Well, is that detrimental to the party? No, it shows that we're passionate people. It shows that we have principle. It shows that, you know, no, that's not detrimental in the
This
slightest.
is a reference to Gareth Bennett, a controversial candidate who's made some comments in the past that you don't agree with.
No.
You have some candidates that you're clearly very unhappy with, and yet you are leader of the party, Nathan Gill. What does that say about your leadership?
It says that I am leading the party within the boundaries of the authority and the powers that I have. I mean, as I've said to you, I'm not able to create...
Does it frustrate you? Would you like to change those?
Listen, there's lots of things that frustrate me about politics and about certainly UKIP and the internal wranglings of the party. Let's be perfectly honest, of course there are. But the reality is, I know what I want us to do and achieve. And I know that we have a team that, you know, Gareth Bennett is completely and utterly new to politics. Genuinely joined the party like a year ago. He needs training, he needs improving.
This is a comment about
that's what we have.
Growth in rubbish in Cardiff and immigration. That's the controversial one.
Yeah, his own
But as leader, I just wonder sometimes you get so frustrated that maybe you think you'll walk away from it. I mean, you weren't elected as leader. No. It's not an easy party to lead, is it?
No, I mean, I've been quoted several times as saying it is like herding cats, and I'm afraid that's because of all of the different personalities. That's because we're a bit of a fiery party. People come to us, either they've never been in politics at all, or they come from other parties, not just Conservatives. You know, we have got Plaid Cymru, we have got Labour, we have got Lib Dems as well, believe it or not. So we are a fiery party, and we're dealing with people's emotions and people's belief systems, and you know, you always say, if you want to keep friends, don't talk politics or religion. Goodness me, I talk politics.
And you will be
all
herding
the time.
cats after this election,
I'm sure
and you
I
will be
will be.
herding cats after the referendum.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nathan Gill.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.